But the thing is if Fauci were sitting here and you pin him down, he'll actually say he knows that natural immunity works as well as the vaccine or better, but he's spreading a noble lie. He's sort of Plato reincarnated, and he's spreading this noble lie because he's afraid it might deter some people. He knows it's the truth, and he knows all of the studies. Somebody published the other day, 29, 30 studies all supporting the idea that natural immunity exists and is a very potent form of immunity. He knows all of that. But when he was asked the other day on CNN, what about natural immunity? He immediately falls back to lying. He says, well, wow, that's an interesting question. We should look into that. What horse hockey? He knows exactly what the answer is, but he doesn't want to tell you the truth because he's afraid it might deter people. I think it could be the opposite. The people left who haven't been vaccinated, actually an ounce of honesty might actually convince them to actually maybe decide. So I was meeting with the CEO of a corporation this week, and their population is union, and many of them are resisting. About a third of them have not been immunized or been vaccinated. And I said, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you go to the head of the union, say you understand their grievance, and see if they want to volunteer to get blood testing for antibodies. And then if you find that the third that remains, half of them have antibodies, why don't you give them an accommodation? And to the other third, why don't you tell them that we found you don't have immunity, and we just thought you'd like to know, and maybe because you don't have immunity and have this risk factor or this risk factor, maybe you'd like to get vaccinated. Maybe through persuasion and information, some of those people might choose to be vaccinated. And this is what I want to make sure I do in every interview. Is I tell people I'm not against being vaccinated. I'm actually pro-vaccine and pro-freedom. And I would never force somebody to do it. But I think over 65, the odds of dying from the disease are much greater than being harmed from the vaccination. And at the high ages, definitely that. I think if you're overweight, the same thing at almost any age. But really, overweight and age adds to it. But if you're a 15-year-old kid and you had COVID last month, your parents are idiots if they're going to go ahead and vaccinate you, because there's no way that you need to be vaccinated. There's no science behind it. It's all submission. And really, they haven't adequately studied people who have had COVID and vaccine. The interesting thing about it, and Thomas Massey's been great at pointing this out, all of the studies of the safety of the vaccination for COVID exclude people who've already had it.
Yeah.
Because they know they're already immune, so they don't want to study them. But we don't have the safety profile. And if you've already had the disease and you get vaccinated, you have about 1,000 times greater immune response. Could that be related to myocarditis? I don't know. Maybe it's not, but we certainly ought to study it before we start forcing vaccination on a group of people who are not at risk for dying from this thing.
Yeah, the really obnoxious part gets back to the question of personal choice. Like, if you make a choice based on your risk assessment and it doesn't turn out the way that you had hoped, at least someone didn't force you to make the wrong decision.